Which brings us to the idea of best practices. Stephanie, if you're advising people, if someone comes to you and says, well, you're in big data, what advice do you give us in terms of like improving our strategy or getting the most from our deployment? I mean, what do you hear, or what do you tell people instead of some best practices for big data?
Yeah, I actually tell folks that the most important part of this equation is not to think about the technology, but really think about how big data is going to change the work style of your organization and how we analyze information. And one of the things that Hadoop has done for us is introduce a new type of workflow around schema on read, which is more discovery-oriented analytics.
Wait, give me the term again. Schema on read.
Schema on read. So that's a technical concept.
Okay.
Which basically we don't have to model the data in advance to be able to apply it to answering a business question.
Okay.
And what's great about schema on read is it introduces a more exploratory experience with the data, where I, as a business person, I don't have to, in advance of trying to apply data to my business problem, I don't have to communicate requirements to build a data model in advance and try to guess all the questions I want to ask of the data. I can really sit down with Hadoop and be able to just start to explore data and be able to take kind of a more hypothesis testing step to get into an answer. And I think that's the biggest impact that big data can have on business organizations, is giving them that freedom to use data as an asset to actually solve problems. But to get there, you got to change your mindset, and I think a lot of organizations get stuck, and their big data or their review locations get stuck in technology. They're not able to think about how their analysts might be able to work differently. And so one of the things we're trying to do as a vendor is get organizations and analysts to think differently about how they find and access their data and collaborate and communicate around it. And that's a pretty exciting place to be with organizations.
Fern, what's your advice when people say to you, we have big data, but it may not be working for us? So how can we get more out of this? Is there any like best practices that you throw out to people?
Well, there's a lot of best practices. I guess the way you said it, I mean, the first best practice to me would be, if they're not getting enough out of it, maybe they're not thinking about how they need to use it. I said this before. What are they trying to get out of it? If they're just sort of collecting it and not doing anything with it, what's the business problem that they're trying to solve with it? And then, when they know the business problem, if they claim that they can't get executive support or the budget, I mean, they have to evangelize it. Sometimes it's not. If you have an executive on board who's interested, that's great. But a lot of organizations we talk to, they actually go door to door to door, and they sit down with executives, and they explain the value, they explain what they can be doing, and they look for the executive that can help them, and then they build it up from there. It's sort of like not a silver bullet. It's just a lot of hard work. A lot of people say, a lot of IT or developers, they say, we become salespeople, so they're actually trying to sell the concepts. So that's right. What they're doing. And, they get the executives on board, they get the budget, they build their prototypes and proof of concepts that show value, and then, it sort of takes off. It does take off from there. But, in between that, there's lots of sort of best practices about how you evangelize, how you talk, building centers of excellence to, get skills, how you hire people, how you get the data scientist skills in your organization and that sort of thing. So it's a longer list of best practices, I guess I'd say.